Considered a masterpiece of cinema, Citizen Kane excelled in several elements of filmmaking. What set this movie apart from others was how cinematography was used to tell the story of Charles Foster Kane. New to filmmaking at that time, director Orson Welles used innovative techniques to tell this story and picked Greg Toland as the cinematographer. Toland used the deep focus shot as his central cinematography technique throughout the movie, which gave Citizen Kane its unique feel.
Often support, then denounce.
The most prominent example of the use of deep focus in the film is during the flashback sequence when we are taken back to the childhood of Charles Foster Kane. The scene opens with the young Charles playing outside in the snow. The camera starts to zoom out and into the house as everything in the frame remains in focus.
I'll sign those papers now, Mr. Thatcher.
You people seem to forget that I'm the boy's father.
It's going to be done exactly the way I've told Mr. Thatcher.
Once the zoom sequence is complete, we can see Charles in the background playing outside in the snow and Mrs. Kane in the foreground of the frame. This scene is an exemplary example of deep focus because the placement of the actors in relation to what is being played out is highlighted by this technique. In the foreground of the lower right of the frame, Mrs. Kane and Mr. Thatcher are seen deciding the fate of Charles. Mrs. Kane is the person with all the authority, and the power structure decreases as we move deeper into the frame. In the middle ground, Mr. Kane is seen in an agitated state as he complains to his wife, but to no avail. In the background through the window, we see young Charles, who has no authority about his future. The placement of Charles through the window symbolizes he is about to be entrapped into the custodianship of Mr. Thatcher, and this can also be viewed as a glimpse of what is to become of their relationship in the future. In this scene, cutting was eliminated by Welles, which led to the shot becoming a complex unit into itself. By not using cutting and close-ups in the shot, Welles had to place emphasis on providing information, which created a sense of visual conflict.
Why I can't raise my own voice more than I can understand.
Welles used Toland's deep-focus cinematography to portray conflicts between characters throughout Citizen Kane. Another example of this at play is in the office party scene in the film. In this scene, which takes place in the office of the Inquirer, a debate takes place between Kane's friend Leland and his general manager Bernstein. The two debate the character of Kane in a three-plane setting, with Bernstein in the foreground, Leland in the middle ground, and Kane in the background of the frame. In this sequence, the shot cuts to a reverse angle of Leland and Bernstein continuing the conversation. In this frame, we see that Leland has been placed in the foreground, Bernstein in the middle ground, and similar to the flashback scene, we can see Kane in the window, which is once again symbolic of his freedom. There are several similarities between this scene and the earlier flashback sequence as Charles Foster Kane is placed between opposing forces while he remains outside of the conversation.
The said Charles Foster Kane.
Since movies are two-dimensional, visual guide points are required to determine the true scale of a scene when shooting in deep focus. Welles and Toland demonstrated this during two scenes in Citizen Kane. The first was when Kane was in the office of Mr. Thatcher along with Bernstein, as he is signing away his fortune. The windows in the scene initially appear to be of normal size, but as Kane passes by Bernstein and Thatcher and moves into the background, viewers can see that the windows are actually huge.
You're too old to be called anything else. You were always too old. Find about a dozen vacationers still in residence.
You make a joke out of everything. Charlie?
The second example is the scene which takes place in Xanadu between Kane and his second wife Susan. In this scene, viewers realize that the fireplace in the frame is larger than it initially seemed when Kane stands in front of it.
Our home is here, Susan.
There are many scenes in Citizen Kane which use the optical illusion of combining two or more separate images into a single shot to achieve deep focus. An example of this is the scene when Kane finishes Leland's opera review. Leland, who is in the middle ground, and Kane in the foreground were shot separately, and their images were later joined to make it look like they occupied the same space.
You're fired.